Hey everyone, Andrew here from the Tennis Amigos podcast, and I'm just gonna do this solo for this one time before we get like the whole team to weigh in on the Australian Open. But I just kind of wanted to get my opinions out before. So it's the Australian Open just ended, the first Grand Slam of the year, came by pretty fast and ended also kind of really quickly. Probably also because of the fact that it just kind of has to be in a time zone that is like really bad for me particularly. So it just kind of miss a lot of the matches that happen overnight, which is tends to happen even more often towards the end of the tournament when the matches just kind of get scheduled for night sessions anyways. But it has been an interesting tournament. I think it got like some really good results with Jannik Sinner and Madison Keys winning the tournaments, and Sabalenka was bidding to be a third time champion in the Australian Open and the women's draw, having won two times in a row in 2023 and four. And coming off the back of obviously like a really great season, she's number one. Just won the U.S. Open and Australian Open the same year last year. Reached the final, kind of had little bumps on the road, but honestly, kind of still pretty convincing for a world number one. Had a lot of confidence, was exuding, just happiness to be there up until towards obviously losing in that final. Um, and Jannik Sinner also number one, going on for also winning the Australian Open and the U.S. Open in the same year. But this time he was able to, defend his title, his first Grand Slam title defense, which was successful in the Australian Open, beating Zverev in the final. More on him a little bit later. But let's get back to the champion in the women's draw, Madison Keys. A long time coming. She's just about a couple, maybe months, I believe, from turning 30. Not exactly sure. When is her birthday? I'm kind of really bad at keeping track of all those players' birthdays and whatnot. So I just kind of know generally their ages. But in any case, it's been a long time coming. She has been kind of like hot and cold her whole career. Has done a few, has had a few good results in Grand Slams before. Most notably, I believe the U.S. Open final. I can't remember the date either. All right, just confirm here that like she's actually a couple of weeks, like literally a couple of weeks. February 17th is her birthday when she's turning 30. And her most notable result in the Grand Slam really had been the U.S. Open final in 2017, where she lost to fellow Americans Lauren Stevens. Another pretty hot and cold player, has a really, really high peak, as you can see, winning the U.S. Open, but just kind of like navigating some tough patches here and there. But yeah, like a lot of people that actually kind of said before that Madison Keys had the level to win a Grand Slam, had the level to be one of the top players on the WTA. She has been ranked as high as number 7 in the world. Has dropped a little bit off of that, but her game is as good as anyone's. Like really, she times the ball, and she can hit with as much easy power, I would say, as even Sabalenka. Um, she is a competent mover. I'm not sure she wouldn't qualify as like the best one on the tour, but when you get like so much power, and she's got some really good feel as well in her forehand slices, like she can keep the ball in defense for quite some time, and she is technically like intelligent as well. So it has been kind of puzzling, like in a sense, like why hasn't she been able to make that breakthrough before? But it just happens. Some players just don't have that same way of approaching the game as some others, like some Iga Swiatek, was able to like really just kind of like lock in and just being there. Like Madison Keys just had like some of those moments where even in a match she can be like playing really well, and then all of a sudden just her level just kind of drops, or she just won't be able to convert a big point here, and then just kind of like snowball effect into like losing the match. I think it was pretty noticeable when she ended up losing to Sabalenka in Sabalenka's first final of the U.S. Open, maybe first final, I think, in 2023. She lost in a big third set tie break. And I think she's redeemed herself, and she's done a really great job this year at the Australian Open. She's been Elena Rybakina, Elena Svitolina, and Iga Swiatek, and then finalizing with like defeating the world number one and huge favorite to win the title, Aryna Sabalenka. So like, yeah, I think that kind of pushes that just kind of like puts a very interesting character now on the tour in the WTA. Will Madison Keys keep up this incredible level and this incredible like winning mentality? I've heard here and there that like I guess on Twitter that she changed her racket as well, maybe making for like more easier power, even if that was even possible. But so is she going to become like a contender for, big titles now as well? Like, is she going to be, really putting herself in the conversation when come time for like Miami and Indian Wells? And is the clay season going to do her any favors? How is she going to do at Wimbledon? Is she going to go for the US Open title? There's a lot of pressure there as well. Some players like it to play at home, some players don't. She's been in the final before. Maybe now she's going to be feeling way more confident. Of course, like there's a couple months from now, so a lot of things can change. But having beaten all these players, saving match point against Swiatek, playing a 3-setter against Rybakina, playing 3-setter against Vitolina, playing. I don't remember if she saved a match point against Sabalenka. I think she did, but it she just kind of went on and won the match. So it's going to be very interesting to look now, like what Madison Keys is going to do, because she was always a dangerous player. Every time that you see her in the draw, you think, is she going to cause a huge upset, or is she going to go on a deep run and be unplayable like she can be? Or will she just, kind of crash out maybe in the second or third round, like having a very poor performance? And I think this sequence of wins that she just had puts her in a very interesting spot in the narrative, like towards the end, not towards the end, but like as the season will progress. I'm really excited to see like more of like what she's going to do. And I do think that she has a really big shot at, you know, maybe cracking back into the top 5. That's the way that she's been playing. I think it could very, very well be in the realm of possibility towards the end of the season. It's also interesting to look at like Swiatek. I think she did a really great job this year at the Australian Open. It's very clear that she's been trying to like expand back into the hard court. So she had like a really dominant season 2022, but wasn't really able to like back that up after. Well, she backed a lot of it up, still remaining #1 for quite some time and winning big titles, winning Roland Garros like now I think for the third or fourth straight year, third straight year, I believe. And just trying to like branch out again and like be more dominant in other surfaces, especially now with the danger of Aryna Sabalenka, and players like Rybakina, against whom Swiatek struggled in the past. And I think she really will try to not just be a clay court specialist, well, I guess a clay court goat, if you will, but really try to like go into the hard court where she has like probably a bigger chance of doing some damage rather than the grass. But the grass will kind of probably still be a weak surface. But like, let's see what she comes up with when that time comes. But it's just only a couple weeks, so it's definitely the best strategy to try to branch out and like be more proactive, be more decisive, be just better, I guess, on hard courts. And of course, like we have Sabalenka. Who knows what the future holds for her? I do believe that she's been feeling great within herself. She was extremely angry that she lost the final, broke her racket, left the court, came back and did like a real hilarious, final runner-up speech. But like let's see like how many titles she can win, how well she's going to do in the Wells in Miami. Indian Wells probably still a very, very locked in ground for Iga Swiatek, being a very slow hard court. But I do think that Sabalenka will want to keep her dominance in hard courts for a little longer, and really try to like dethrone Swiatek and Indian Wells. Try to take the title there in Miami before we get back to the clay court season, where obviously the the challenge is to win Roland Garros, having to probably face Swiatek. So I think that is also an interesting narrative towards as the season as we progress. That I think and I really hope that we'll see a lot more Iga Swiatek. Hmm. Iga Swiatek versus Aryna Sabalenka, rival of that rivalry. I think we really need this. I think WTA and tennis in general just kind of like really benefits a lot from getting that. So yeah. And I think the other player that I'm kind of was interested in like looking a little bit in this Australian Open was Coco Gauff. I thought I thought that she had a really big shot at winning this Australian Open. I thought that she played really well, really confidently towards the end of the last season, won the WTA finals, and is a US Open champion. So I definitely thought that like her game was growing, she was getting better, just kind of like being more confident and just kind of like closing out matches like more easily. Not that she didn't do it this time. She was like really passing every round with flying colors. Until like I think the match that I think kind of exposed her a little bit was against Belinda Bencic, which she did will go on and win. I think like 1 and 2 in the second and third set, but she struggled in the first set, lost it at 7-5. Got back to it, I think at 5-4, broke back to bring it 7-5, and Bencic broke back again, and then finally ended up serving out the set. But it was not an easy match, I believe, for Coco, and I think I watched a little bit as well from her match that she lost against Badosa in the quarterfinals. And I do think that one of the problems that I kind of still see, and I remember talking to this with Damien Cuss from Talking Tennis and the Iga and Carlos show or podcast. I can't remember exactly the name right now, with Vansh, one of our co-hosts here at Tennis and Bagels. And I think he said that, or is it? Anyway, somebody said that's probably Damien and everybody else. Like I think Jack Edward as well, who does a lot of stuff for Tennis Scotland and um, Talking Tennis. They saying that like it's mostly mental with the Coco's forehand and service. Mostly the service. I think that it's kind of hitting the nail on the head. I think watching the match. I think that she tends to kind of rely on, you know, her speed, the backhand, and errors from their opponent, just kind of like her consistency, just really just putting balls back in play and making it tough for their opponent. And at first, like when her winning matches, her getting confidence by just kind of like never giving up. Um, Even when she's not playing her best. I thought it was a really great thing. I still think it's a great thing like, to keep that as an actual attribute, a quality that she has in her game. But I think that the problem is that it's kind of becoming who she is, I think, as a player, especially when it comes to like players who are really going to challenge her and like really put her against the wall. I think that she's been relying too much on, I guess the winning ugly. It would be with the lack of better expressions, better terms to say. But I think that she hasn't had confidence in her serve, so she ends up dropping her serve. So she relies on, you know, her return and players not being able to, close out sets and matches. I feel like that's kind of she rises up to the challenge of like being mentally tough in that regard. But I think that this is constantly putting her in a position of risk in a match where, what happens if they ended up serving for the set? What happens if they ended up, just toughing it up, like saving a couple break points and just finally getting across the line, which ended up happening with Bencic when she won the first set, happened with Badosa that she won the entire match. And it was not easy for Badosa to do it, but she got it done and she got her nose in front. She kept going and she had that advantage. And, you know, oftentimes, not oftentimes, but like it will happen that you will lose the match. Like you can't rely on, playing better when you're behind. I think that it's a great quality to have, but I think that if you're able to not get into this situation in the first place, it would be better. And I don't believe that Goff wants this as her A game. I don't think that this is her strategy. I don't think that she goes on a match and just go like, I'm just gonna, fall down a break and just let the opponent crumble while I rise up to the challenge and, never give up attitude and then finally win from behind. I don't think that's what she wants to do. I do feel like this is a position where she's kind of getting comfortable in the at, and again, not necessarily a bad thing, but she needs to be more comfortable, you know, leading and winning, especially when it comes to players that are going to be a challenge, who are elite players, like you have to put Swiatek and Sabalenka and even Rybakina in the mix. Madison Keys coming up, who knows? Maybe she's going to be one of the ones that are going to cause a lot of troubles for Gauff in the future. So I feel like yes, Gauff is an extremely deserving world number 3 right now. I think she still is one of the best players in the world that is poised to win more Grand Slam titles. But I do think that she needs to um, find something. I don't know how she's going to do it, but I do feel like she needs to find more of that confidence that she is able not to just win matches against those players, but to, go out in front and dictate and dominate and, run away with a set 6 love or like 6-1. I think it's definitely possible. Like Swiatek does that all the time. And if she does end up falling behind, she already has that confidence that like it's not because I'm behind that I'm going to lose necessarily. And being like a great player um, in the sense that like it's really hard to knock her out like of a match, like just really like just put an end to it. It's great attribute. But I think that she needs to be more able to also just close out, her business and serve her games, just control the double faults, be more confident. She has a powerful serve. She has no business like dropping serve, often, even though obviously WTA has incredible returners. But I do think that she can hold more often and she can, keep herself in front and taking care of her own serve more often than what she does right now. So that's what I think that I've kind of observed. Let me know if I'm wrong, obviously, like if what your thoughts are. But I do think that, I do still think that Gauff is going to have at least some 2 or 3 more Grand Slam titles to her name. In the next couple of years, maybe towards the end of her, as in her career as a whole. Now back to the men's tennis. I do think that obviously the interesting parts of this were obviously Medvedev losing in the second round to Lerner Tien in a battle of attrition where Tien basically played the same style of Medvedev and came out on top, even though Medvedev is kind of the master of his own craft. So it's doubly more stunning that he lost that match. Jannik Sinner, not really much to say, and wasn't necessarily very challenged towards, in the entire tournament. It's just the standard that he plays. I think that, it's going to take players really like getting out of their comfort zone, just, making him play different shots, making him play different styles, um, moving him maybe towards the net a little bit more, just trying to dictate play. But, Jannik is kind of really raising the bar as well for himself as the world number 1. And it just is what it is. I think he's an extremely deserving world number 1 right now. I think he's probably going to keep winning big titles and slam titles as well as we go by. And the only other player that I really would see making a dent in that is Carlos Alcaraz. Obviously, he didn't lose a match to Jannik Sinner last year. Had a completely different, season, just ups and downs. Still on 2 Grand Slam titles, the Channel Slam, Roland Garros, and Wimbledon. A very convincing win over Novak Djokovic in the Wimbledon final, obviously. But he's still on number 3. Or number 2 is Alexander Zverev, who also had like a very consistent season. Even though he won maybe like 2 big titles, 2 Masters 1000, and not really much other than that. Her resume compared to Alcaraz is not as good. But Alcaraz has his own problems, his own things that he needs to sort out really before he can kind of weave himself back into world number 1 conversation. He needs to face Sinner, I guess, more often in Grand Slams. He did play him only once last year. Had a really bad showing in the U.S. Open specifically. I don't even remember exactly what happened in the Australian Open, but he wasn't great. I know it didn't really go that far. I think he lost maybe in the quarterfinals, even to maybe Alex Zverev. But he is 2 years younger than Sinner, 21 years old, and he's probably growing to being better, being more consistent on court. Obviously, like style is different. He's more like a showman. Like he needs to be playing on high energy points and high energy, style to be able to bring out his best. Um, but he also kind of needs to maybe take a page out of Coco Gauff's book and win ugly more often. I think that's kind of like a thing that Carlos has been needing to do, and obviously kind of needs to make a lot of an easier job on like earlier rounds if he wants to go back and to you know getting deeper into tournaments and having um himself fresh physically to face against the best in the world. But yeah, right now it's just kind of needs to kind of get better at playing those hard courts. And to be fair, I do believe that he just kind of ran into a red hot Novak Djokovic, now coached by Andy Murray. I think Andy probably had like a really good input into like what Djokovic should do and how he should play Alcaraz. I think that them both like working together, like two players from the big four, who basically redefined tennis in the last decade or so. Uh, he was definitely going to be a winning combination. It just so happened that Djokovic is obviously a little older now, like turning 38 soon. Um, and he just couldn't really hold his body just wouldn't hold. So he kind of ended up going into his first match a little bit on that layer, and just couldn't really keep up. And he just had to retire after one set, playing basically on just one leg. So it just so happens that Alcaraz could not get past Djokovic this time, all-time great, 10-time Australian Open champion. It was obviously never going to be an easy one. But I just want to mention a little bit on Medvedev as well, because I do feel like the biggest issue with him right now is that maybe his time is past. I mean, I'm not sure exactly if his fitness is at its best. I know he has some shoulder issues as well, so he's kind of struggling with his serve, which was a really big reason why he was able to, win as much as he did, because could get his service, done with like not in a very efficient manner, and was a really big returner. So I feel like players have been figuring himself out. His technique maybe doesn't lend itself for that many changes. He does not have easy power, so he doesn't hit as many winners. He doesn't push opponents back as much as it would be necessary. All players now are extremely fit, and they're like kind of training to be in the mode of like Djokovic and Nadal back in the other era, or Murray as well, where you just kind of have to play these long, excruciating rallies from the back of the court and play for like 3 or 4 hours, maybe even 5. So I don't really know exactly what Medvedev would need to do. Maybe he needs to like really change his game very, on a fundamental level. He has been playing well at the net, so that's encouraging to see. Maybe he can get his serve sorted out as well. He could get back to winning ways, but it's definitely almost safe to say that his window is closed. I don't even know if he's going to be able to reach any more Grand Slam finals. Grand Slam semis and quarters are probably where he's going to be sitting. And after losing in the second round, it's kind of interesting to see, like, will he even reach the second week of slams? Like, is that going to be the norm for him? Maybe not really. Maybe he's just maybe he enjoyed the time that he had, won quite a few Masters 1000s, won ATP finals, and won the US Open. Wasn't able to close out matches against Nadal and Sinner at the Australian Open. Couldn't even challenge Djokovic in the Australian Open, and lost again to Djokovic in the US Open another time. So maybe that's it for him. Maybe he had a great career, the most successful player born in the 90s. Um, was world #1 as well for a little stint. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's a career. Maybe this his prime is past, and I'm not really going to be seeing much of how I'm not going to be picking him as a favorite for big titles anymore, I would think, unless the draw really opens up and I know that he would be able to beat him, but like I don't think that he's going to be able to get past Alcaraz and Sinner often at all. Maybe a win here and there, like he did at the US Open against Alcaraz a couple of years back. And yeah, it's going to be it's sad for me to be saying this, but I really can't really be putting any more stock on him. I don't think that he's gonna um, be the player that he used to be, and I don't think that he's gonna win the things that he used to win. And speaking of players who are not winning things that a lot of people expect them to win, well, I do have to say a word about Alexander Zverev. Um, I I just don't think that he's gonna win a Grand Slam ever. I'm just gonna say it. I don't even think that he believes in that he can even win a Grand Slam. I think he he was first of all, he started off really poorly in his career in Grand Slams. Like he would play really well in best of three, but then like come into Grand Slams, he would just like play unnecessary five sets all over, and just took a while for him to get over that. Like lost in a five set to a team in probably the worst Grand Slam final ever played, and reached another final, lost to Alcaraz. Alcaraz kind of like in his hot and cold moments, basically allowed him in the match and allowed the match to go for five sets, which he shouldn't have been. And then lost very comprehensively to Sinner in three sets. A Sinner that is not exactly even playing his best tennis. Um, and without even saying much about like his off-court things, I'm kind of glad that he's not winning as much. I believe that it's not a good look for tennis that he would win, big titles. I think it'd be a really sad reality. So I'm kind of glad that he isn't able to break through that barrier. Um, and I really do believe that he's only making it so far in Grand Slams just because of the opposition, just because the people that he faces, because he has a big serve, he's able to kind of like Medvedev his way into winning matches, like in a sense, like, but kind of like a not as good version, I would say, of Medvedev. And I watched him a little bit against Djokovic. I watched some of the highlights from the final, and Zverev just doesn't seem to have a game plan. He doesn't seem to tactically change anything in the match to try and do anything differently. He doesn't seem to react to what players are doing as well and try to change his tactics. In his first set against Djokovic, he played a terrible match. Djokovic was literally on one leg. He was playing very badly, and he very nearly won that set. I think he went up a break earlier, and Zverev just couldn't, he almost didn't get across. He couldn't cross the line. If Djokovic was playing as well as he played against Alcaraz, healthy, this would have been like a 6-3, 6-4, like maybe 6-3, 7-5, 6-4. Like no chance that Zverev would have done this. And the games that I'm giving Zverev is just because he would be able to like just ace himself out of like some really dangerous situations. But he would not be playing, anywhere near anything. He's putting the ball on court. He's just kind of like looping his forehand, kind of relying on like maybe blowing some interesting shots when he's just passing shots when he's on defense. But his tennis is passive, has no, intention to it. He just hitting the ball to the other side. Um, and you cannot even compare him like to say like the likes of maybe Andy Murray back in the day, because Andy kind of had this style where he kind of also looked like he was just pushing, but he was a counter puncher. He was defending, and he was able to see opportunities and take them. He was able to like make his way across the net. He was able to take advantage on players like would make a wrong move. Zverev doesn't even do anything of like that. Like, he just keeps the rally going until something happens, and just doesn't really feel like anything is going on in his head when he's doing any of that. Um, so I do think that he just made the final by luck. Not necessarily luck, in its entirety. He's had to beat the player who was in front of him. But I just really don't think that in a world where Alcaraz is making to the semifinals, or like players are kind of like rising up against like with an actual plan, or more players are playing better as time goes by, I don't think that he um, is going to be a contender, because I just feel like he just kind of landed where he is because he, is able to be consistent and not miss and hit aces. But I just don't feel like there's much in his game that screams, "I'm gonna win a Grand Slam someday." I just don't feel like there is a chance. I think that he had a window when he almost beat Dominic Thiem because Thiem was playing a really crap match. And then after that, he has no more window. I just don't feel like it depends. I don't think he's ever in his racket. Whatever happens almost on a tennis court. I think it just doesn't depend on him. It depends on whether the other player shows up or has a plan or is talented enough to, um, rally with him and then dictate play. But yeah, I don't think that Zverev has the chance to be a defining factor in this era of tennis, especially now as Jannik Sinner is, reaching basically his peak level, and then Alcaraz is definitely going to get only better, and is going to keep winning matches. And he's a big match player, and he's going to show up and he's going to do well. So yeah, I think that as time goes by, I think that Zverev's even confidence in himself that he'll ever get to win a title like this will just dwindle. And I do also feel like he's gonna get out of that #2 ranking very soon because I think Alcaraz is up there. Um, yeah, and I guess with him, all of the crop of '90s players have been seeing their chances of winning Grand Slams just completely being obliterated. We have Casper Ruud making finals as well in Roland Garros, and US Open, obviously. And we'll also have like Tsitsipas, who has never really been the same player now for a couple of seasons, ever since like he lost in the final of Roland Garros from two sets up to Novak Djokovic. All of these players just seem to be, you know, conformists. They feel like just in the way that they play, in the way that their results are coming in, it's just that like their era feels like it's over, even in their minds, and they just don't have what it, you know. I guess I does the it just doesn't they don't exude the confidence to have what it takes to challenge the new guys that are coming, and it's only going to get tougher. I already mentioned Leonard Etienne. I think is going to be a factor. I have much still to see on him. There's a lot of things that need to happen still. A lot of more matches. There's also João Fonseca, the Brazilian guy, beat Rublev in the first round in straight sets. I guess for the surprise of basically everybody. Um, and yeah, those guys are coming, and I think there's going to be more new guys who are going to be, coming in hungry and very hot, and they will not have to contend against the big three anymore. So I guess um, they're going to be looking up now to Alcaraz and Sinner to be the players to beat. So yeah, that's kind of like what I feel like this season is going to turn out to be. I think there's going to be plenty of good stories on Alcaraz and Sinner. I think that we're going to see more and more confirmation that the '90s players are just out on their way. And I think that there's a lot of space now for this new generation of like maybe 21 players up to 21 years old to really rise up in the rankings and, um, just really dominate the narrative as well on the tennis course and on the ATP tour. So yeah, that's it. Like my very long-winded opinion on what happened on the ATP after the Australian Open in the tennis world. Obviously, let me know if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me know in the comments what do you think. I really like to respond to your comments and talk with you as well. If you're just listening on the podcast, please feel free to reach out to me on X and at Rolenberg Andre or on Blue Sky, where I'm pretty active as well. I think I should just also be Rolenberg Andre. I can't remember for the life of me. But anyways, the links are always going to be in the description for our socials. Make sure as well to interact with Owen on Blue Sky. He's now off Twitter. Just wrote a very killer piece on the factor, where you should support good tennis journalism, good sports journalism, which the Factor really does. And also just follow Varnish, just has all sorts of opinions, all sorts of stats, and just very, very, very accurate and, just hits the nail on the head in his analytics of tennis matches. If you want to, just kind of like understand more about players and who's up and coming, and what the players do well and what do they don't, you know, just kind of like tidbits of great tennis knowledge. Revanche is the way to go. So yeah, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye.